Hello, family. Enjoy this great and beautiful moment with Afri Stories. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and comment. It means the world to us. Also, share this video with your friends and loved ones, and don't miss future videos from us. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. Melissa Daniels stood behind the counter of her grandmother's cozy café, Daybreak Delights, steam rising from the espresso machine as she filled a paper cup with latte art. At 25, she had grown comfortable in her small corner of the world, helping Grandma Lucy run the cafe by day, dreaming of auditions by night. But comfort was a luxury Melissa couldn't afford for long. Her student loan bills lurked around every corner, and her second job as a catering waitress barely chipped away at them. Still, she clung to her dream of becoming a professional actress, hoping that one day fate would intervene and place her on the big screen. It was late afternoon, and the cafe was winding down. Grandma Lucy was meticulously wiping down a table nearby when Melissa's phone buzzed. Usually, she would silence calls during work, but something told her to glance at the screen. The caller ID was an unknown number. She hesitated for just a moment before stepping away from the counter. "Hello?" she answered, tension already creeping into her voice. "Melissa Daniels?" came a cool, businesslike tone. "Yes, that's me. This is Simone Parker from City View Talent Agency. I'm calling about a role that's just become available. We received your headshot from a casting aggregator. Are you still seeking acting opportunities?" Melissa's heart fluttered. City View Talent Agency was well known for placing actors in commercials and even small film roles. She had submitted her portfolio to them months ago. "Yes, of course. I'm very interested." "Good," Simone said, her voice clipped but not unkind. "We have a confidential role for a feature documentary. They need someone immediately, tonight in fact. It pays generously. We'd like you to show up at 7 p.m. sharp at the Luxe Boutique on Clover Avenue. But tonight? And the Luxe Boutique is kind of upscale," Melissa responded, glancing at her reflection in the cafe's pastry case. She was still wearing a flour-dusted apron, her hair in a messy bun. Not exactly high fashion. "Yes, tonight," Simone continued briskly. "Arrive promptly at 7, wearing something modest but professional. No makeup or styling required. They'll handle everything on site. When you arrive, just give them your full name. No other questions. Understood?" Melissa blinked in confusion. "Yes, but—" "Perfect. We'll see you then," Simone said, and the line clicked dead. Melissa stood rooted to the spot, phone in hand, as if the voice on the other end had been an apparition. Grandma Lucy noticed her stunned expression. "Everything all right, dear?" I think so," Melissa replied, finally finding her voice. "I just got a call from a casting agent. They want me for some documentary. They said it pays really well, but it's weird. I have to be there in less than 3 hours." Grandma Lucy offered a warm, encouraging smile. "Well, that sounds like a blessing, doesn't it? Sometimes life changes when we least expect it. If you need to leave early, I can handle the rest of the day here." Half excited, half nervous, Melissa pulled off her apron and hurried home to change. Despite the short notice, she managed to throw together a simple outfit: a knee-length navy skirt, a white blouse, and sensible flats. She even considered pulling her hair back into a sleek ponytail, but decided to leave it down, just in case they wanted to style her differently. On the train ride over, 1,000 questions swirled in her mind. Why a high-end boutique for a documentary? Why the urgency? Why couldn't she ask questions? Despite the red flags, the promise of a generous payday and potential for building her acting resume were too tempting to ignore. She arrived at the Luxe Boutique with 10 minutes to spare. From the outside, it looked more like a mansion than a store. Towering glass windows showcased mannequins in designer gowns, their glittering attire reflecting the boutique's name. Melissa took a deep breath, approached the security guard at the entrance, and said, "I'm Melissa Daniels." The guard gave a curt nod, flipped through a clipboard, and then ushered her inside. The interior was even more opulent. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, velvet couches lined the walls, and racks of couture dresses formed a labyrinth of silk and satin. There was a tension in the air, as though the staff were preparing for a secret VIP event. A woman in a fitted black pantsuit approached, her stiletto heels clicking against the marble floor. "Miss Daniels, right? Come with me." She turned on her heel and led Melissa through a hidden side door into a smaller, private room. It looked like a mini lounge. Plush chairs, mirrors, and racks of exquisite shoes lined the walls. Before Melissa could speak, a suave man in a white suit appeared as though conjured by magic. He offered her a polite smile and handed her a sealed envelope. "Your instructions," he said simply. Melissa opened it, and her breath caught in her throat. Inside was a stack of fresh $100 bills. She quickly counted them in her head. $15,000. She glanced up in shock. I don't understand. Is this an advance payment?" "From this point on, Ms. Daniels, do not speak unless spoken to," the man said with polite firmness. "The money is yours. All you must do is follow the directions we give you tonight." "Understood." Melissa felt a chill creep along her spine, but the money was real and her curiosity was overwhelming. She nodded, voice lost in her throat. "Good," he said, snapping his fingers. Suddenly, a team of stylists, makeup artists, and hairdressers filed into the room. "Please allow the staff to prepare you." Melissa wanted to ask questions. Was this standard procedure? Why the secrecy? But remembered the man's instruction. The moment she opened her mouth, she felt the weight of that thick envelope in her trembling hands. It was more than she'd ever been paid for any role. Could this be the break she needed? As the stylist fussed over her hair, nails, and makeup, she caught glimpses of herself in the mirror. Slowly, her reflection transformed from an overworked, anxious young woman to a poised, glamorous figure worthy of a red carpet event. The boutique staff paraded gowns before her, emerald silk, burgundy velvet, shimmering gold sequin. Each dress seemed more luxurious than the last. She settled on a sleek black number that hugged her figure modestly but elegantly. While a makeup artist lined her eyes with deft precision, Melissa felt a surge of hope mixed with confusion. What kind of documentary requires such extravagance? And what role was she really about to play? Despite her misgivings, Melissa couldn't deny the thrill coursing through her veins. Perhaps the shadows of confusion would clear once she reached the set. She told herself this was just how high-profile productions worked. Secretive, fast-moving, generous with their talent. Besides, she needed the money, and if there was a chance to catch someone's eye and further her career, she'd take it. When the hairdresser finally stepped back with a satisfied nod, Melissa tried to stand but wobbled slightly. She wasn't used to wearing such high heels. Steadying herself, she looked around for the man in the white suit. He was nowhere to be found. Instead, the woman in the black pantsuit returned. "This way, Miss Daniels," she said, ushering Melissa toward a door at the back of the lounge. Melissa clutched her envelope of cash, her heart pounding. She sensed she was on the precipice of something that would change her life forever, but she still had no idea what it was. As the door swung open, all she could do was step forward into whatever awaited her, hoping that this gamble would pay off in ways she never imagined. The transition from the lounge to the next space felt surreal, as though Melissa had walked through a portal into another dimension. She found herself standing in a dimly lit hallway, its walls draped with fine silk. The carpet was thick beneath her heels, muffling her footsteps as she followed the woman in the black pantsuit. At the end of the corridor, two double doors swung open to reveal a vast salon filled with bright, flashing lights. Photographers, or at least what appeared to be photographers, stood in a semicircle, cameras at the ready. A hush fell over the room the moment Melissa stepped inside. Then, without warning, the cameras began to flash in rapid succession. Each burst of light assaulted her eyes, leaving her blinking spots of color into the air. She froze, uncertain how to pose or move, but the woman in the black pantsuit gently guided her forward. "Just stand there, Miss Daniels. Look straight ahead." So Melissa did, putting on a half-smile she learned from her scant modeling experience. Her pulse hammered. Was this some kind of publicity shoot for the documentary? She wanted to ask, but she remembered the instructions. Speak only when spoken to. When the burst of photography finally subsided, the stylist reemerged, retouching her hair and makeup. She noticed that a few people were whispering in corners, occasionally glancing at her. It felt as if she were an animal on display, examined, evaluated, and judged. The suave man in the white suit reappeared, his polished shoes glinting under the lights as he approached. "Everything is proceeding smoothly," he declared, more to the room than directly to her. He surveyed her appearance from head to toe. "Ms. Daniels, you will now proceed to the next phase. Please follow me." She clutched the envelope of cash tighter, her nerves fraying. The man led her to an adjoining room more opulent than the last. Velvet drapes, antique chaise lounges, and glittering chandeliers suggested an environment ripe for a lavish party. But the mood was hushed, almost tense. "Now," as you were informed, the man began, carefully enunciating each word, "you are to play the role of Maid in a high-profile documentary. Our client is an international figure with considerable sway. Discretion and obedience are paramount." Melissa finally found her voice. "So, we're filming here in the city?" The man tilted his head, eyebrows arching as if she'd violated a rule by asking a question. But he answered quietly, "Not exactly. Filming is on location, overseas. Tonight, you will travel. The crew is already in transit." "Overseas?" Melissa's eyes widened. Nobody had mentioned traveling internationally, not on such short notice. She swallowed, feeling the weight of the $15,000 pressing into her palm. I see," she managed, forcing calm into her voice. "Where exactly am I going?" "Paris." He paused, watching her reaction. "Our client wants this documentary to be globally impactful. You will serve in your capacity there, in full costume and character." Before Melissa could press for more information, 2 attendants entered, each carrying a luggage bag that appeared brand new. They set them at Melissa's feet, bowed their heads slightly, and left. Confusion flickered in her mind. She had packed nothing, yet here were suitcases ready to go. "These contain your wardrobe, accessories, and any personal items you might need." The man continued, "You will find all the necessities, as per our client's instructions. Your presence is required immediately. We have arranged your transport." A knot formed in Melissa's stomach. Everything was happening far too fast. "But my passport, I don't have it with me." The man offered a thin smile. "That has been handled. Our client's reach is extensive. There will be no issues with customs or immigration, I assure you." Melissa stared at the suitcases. Were these people even legit? Yet the presence of so many staff members, the boutique, the money, they certainly had resources. Perhaps this was simply how extremely wealthy producers operated. She exhaled, fighting to contain her swirling anxiety. "All right," she said softly. "I'll trust you." "Excellent. A car is waiting for you. You will be driven to a private airstrip where a jet is ready to depart." Her heart pounded as she was guided outside. The crisp evening air contrasted with the glowing interior she'd just left behind. Parked by the curb was a sleek black sedan with tinted windows. A uniformed driver stood by, holding the door open. She hesitated for a second, glancing behind her, wondering if she should run. But the memory of her grandmother's finances, her own mounting bills, and the possibility that this bizarre job could skyrocket her career held her in place. Slipping into the back seat, she clutched the envelope of cash in her lap, as if it were her lifeline. The driver pulled away from the curb, and soon the boutique's lights vanished behind them. The streets of the city blurred by, illuminated by the glow of street lamps. Traffic parted like waves of the sedan, suggesting that every detail of this journey had been orchestrated. She tried to settle her racing thoughts. Was she being scammed, kidnapped, or was this genuinely a high-stakes documentary shoot? The hush of the car's interior only sharpened her anxiety. She glanced at her phone. No messages, no updates from Simone at the agency. She considered calling Grandma Lucy to at least let her know what was happening, but something told her to wait. Maybe once she was safely on board the plane, and certain this was all legitimate, she could make a quick call. After about half an hour, they pulled into a private airport terminal, a low-slung, modern building all glass and steel. A small sign read, "Private Charters" in subdued lettering. The sedan rolled to a stop by a sleek, white jet waiting on the tarmac. Its engines were silent, but lights glowed along its windows, casting a welcoming aura in the night. The driver opened her door, helping her step out onto the runway. A brisk wind whipped her hair around, and she clung to the envelope and the new suitcases as best she could. A tall man in a tailored coat approached and signaled her to follow him up a short flight of steps leading into the jet. Inside, plush leather seats, gold-toned fixtures, and soft ambient lighting greeted her. Several individuals sat conversing in hushed tones, their faces partially turned away. One was tapping away on a laptop, another flipping through a thick stack of papers. Nobody spared her more than a cursory glance. The man who had led her aboard nodded politely. "Make yourself comfortable, Ms. Daniels. We'll be taking off shortly." Melissa's eyes darted around. She set the suitcases down in a corner and eased into a seat near a window. Gazing out at the tarmac, she noticed the city lights twinkling in the distance, and for the first time, fear and exhilaration merged into one overwhelming sensation. She was about to fly to Paris for a project she barely understood, playing a maid in a high-profile documentary. The aircraft began to hum as its engines powered up. The man who had spoken to her earlier took a seat across the aisle, pulling out his phone. Melissa clutched the soft leather of her armrest and closed her eyes. The roar of the jet grew louder, and then they were moving faster, until the ground fell away beneath them. In the silence of ascent, all Melissa could think was that she had somehow stepped out of her life and into a dream, or maybe a trap. She had no idea which, but she couldn't turn back now. She glanced at the envelope again, reminding herself that she was doing this for her grandmother, for herself, for a chance at a better future. Some hours later, when the plane reached cruising altitude, a flight attendant offered her a silver tray of refreshments. She sipped a glass of water, scanning the cabin. It dawned on her that none of these people looked like film crew. They were too polished, too businesslike, perhaps producers or investors. She didn't know, but she vowed to keep her eyes open, gather clues, and maintain her composure. Whatever awaited her in Paris, she'd face it with poise. She sank back into the leather seat, heart pounding with a mix of dread and anticipation. She was en route to a city she'd always dreamed of visiting, though never like this, enveloped in a mystery she couldn't begin to unravel. Melissa awakened as the plane began its descent into the City of Lights. Her mind felt foggy from intermittent sleep, but her pulse quickened when she realized they were about to land in Paris. She peered through the small window, catching sight of the Eiffel Tower glowing like a beacon in the pre-dawn sky. The city stretched out beneath her, a tapestry of lights and winding streets that felt like an artist's masterpiece. Her excitement warred with apprehension. She'd never been abroad, yet here she was, traveling first class in a private jet, embroiled in a secret project that paid her an obscene amount of money just for showing up. The flight attendant approached with a final safety check. "We'll be touching down soon, Ms. Daniels. A car will be waiting for you on the tarmac." Melissa thanked her, forcing a polite smile. The moment the plane's wheels touched the runway, adrenaline spiked through her. She was truly here in Paris. The cabin lights brightened, and before long, everyone began gathering their belongings. Melissa noticed that the man who'd greeted her on board had vanished. The other passengers, if they were even passengers, slipped out quietly, leaving her alone with the flight attendant. A black limousine was indeed waiting for her, engine purring softly in the crisp morning air. As Melissa descended the plane steps, the driver stepped forward, tipping his cap. "Mademoiselle Daniels, bienvenue à Paris. S'il vous plaît, follow me." His accent was light, but discernible, adding an air of authenticity to the surreal experience. She clutched her envelope and followed, trying not to stumble on the unfamiliar tarmac. The driver placed her suitcases in the trunk, then guided her into the limo's back seat. Melissa had expected maybe a single camera operator or production assistant, but no one else was around. It felt more like a clandestine operation than a documentary shoot. The limo drove along winding Parisian streets, passing ornate buildings and scenic boulevards. Melissa's heart fluttered with curiosity. Where were they heading? She'd imagined a film set or a production studio, maybe even an old European chateau if the documentary demanded it. But the vehicle soon turned onto a grand estate's driveway, flanked by statues and manicure hedges. The mansion at the end looked like something out of a period film. Tall iron gates, a sweeping fountain in front, and a facade of centuries-old stone. She rubbed her eyes in disbelief. This place was beyond lavish. It was palatial. She half expected a camera crew to jump out and start filming her shocked expression. But as the limo pulled to a stop under a portico, no cameras appeared, just a butler in traditional attire, waiting to open the car door. "Bonjour, Mademoiselle Daniels," he greeted. "My name is Bernard. Please, follow me inside. Your presence is eagerly awaited." Melissa stepped out of the limo, the enormity of the mansion looming over her. Her heels clicked on the marble steps leading to the front entrance. Inside, a massive foyer opened up before her, replete with gilded molding, oil paintings, and a chandelier so large it could have lit an entire ballroom on its own. She heard the faint echo of footsteps and hushed voices, but saw no sign of production team, no cameras, no directors yelling instructions. Bernard led her through a hallway lined with portraits of stern-looking aristocrats. The corridor opened into a drawing room, where a tall, silver-haired woman sat on a settee. Her posture was rigid, her attire impeccable, a pencil skirt and a silk blouse, both in dark hues. Her hawk-like eyes assessed Melissa the moment she entered. "Ah, the actress," the woman said, her accent holding a slight French lilt. "I am Madame Martine Moreau. You will be working here, in the service of Monsieur Jacques Moreau." Melissa stood awkwardly, unsure of how to respond. This was supposed to be a documentary about a high-profile figure, right? She felt the envelope of cash in her hand, a tangible reminder of why she was here. Madame Moreau's gaze flicked to the envelope. "You've been compensated, I see. Good. Then let us not waste time." Melissa cleared her throat. "Excuse me, Madame Moreau. Could you clarify my role? I was told I'd be playing a maid in a documentary. But so far, I haven't seen any cameras or production crew." Madame Moreau's lips curved into a thin smile. "You will receive further instructions. For now, you must meet Monsieur Moreau himself. He is anxious to see you." Bernard ushered Melissa out of the drawing room, guiding her deeper into the mansion. Her mind spun with questions. Where were the producers? The set? She glanced at the opulent surroundings, antique vases, plush carpets, ornate tapestries, wondering if there was a hidden camera behind each priceless artifact. They arrived at a pair of double doors, each panel carved with intricate designs of mythical creatures. Bernard knocked softly, then opened the door. Inside was a spacious study with walls lined by towering bookshelves. The scent of old leather and pipe tobacco permeated the air. Near the window stood an elderly man in an impeccably tailored suit, gazing out onto the manicured gardens. He turned slowly, revealing a gentle face marked by laugh lines and age spots. "Ah, Mademoiselle Daniels," he said, his voice surprisingly robust. Come in. I am Jacques Moreau." Melissa stepped forward, half expecting cameras to start rolling, but the room was devoid of any filming equipment. Jacques Moreau's keen eyes studied her, and for a moment, she sensed a flicker of relief in his expression. "She does resemble the photographs," he murmured to Bernard, who nodded in agreement. Then, addressing Melissa, Jacques offered a soft smile. "I understand you are here to fulfill a most important role. We will have time to discuss the details. But first, let me say how grateful I am for your prompt arrival." Melissa tried to piece together the puzzle. "I'm pleased to meet you, Monsieur Moreau," she said politely. "I look forward to learning more about this project." Jacques' eyes sparkled with something akin to mischief, but he merely nodded. "All in good time. You must be exhausted from your journey. Bernard will show you to your quarters. We'll talk soon." Quarters? This was beginning to feel less like a film shoot and more like something else entirely. She followed Bernard out of the study, her heels clicking on the polished floor as they made their way upstairs. Every corridor was a testament to old-world luxury. Marble busts on pedestals, gold-framed mirrors, lush carpets that muffled their footsteps. Finally, he stopped at a door near the end of a long hallway. "This is your room," Bernard said, pushing open the door to reveal a sumptuous bedroom complete with a canopy bed, gilded furniture, and tall windows overlooking the gardens. "Please freshen up. Someone will bring you a meal, and then escort you to your orientation. Orientation? Melissa repeated, stepping inside. What exactly am I being oriented to, Bernard? But Bernard simply bowed his head slightly, refusing to elaborate. It is not my place to say, mademoiselle. You will learn soon enough. With that, he departed, leaving Melissa alone amidst the opulence. She noticed Maid's uniform folded neatly on a chair, a traditional black and white outfit, far more luxurious than what she had envisioned. She picked it up gingerly, the fine fabric slipping through her fingers. She sank onto the edge of the bed, a swirl of emotions flooding her, excitement, confusion, and more than a dash of fear. The envelope of cash felt heavier than ever in her hand. She was in Paris, in a lavish mansion, supposedly cast as a maid in a documentary. Yet there were no cameras, no obvious production staff, just wealthy people and elaborate secrecy. Something told her that whatever she had agreed to was far more complicated than she could have ever imagined. Setting the envelope aside, she vowed to remain vigilant. If the role was legitimate, she'd perform it to the best of her ability. If not, well, she'd figure out soon enough. The next few hours passed in a blur for Melissa. After a quick shower, she tried on the maid's uniform. It fit surprisingly well, as if tailored for her exact measurements. A light knock at the door announced the arrival of a young maid carrying a silver tray laden with croissants, fruit, and a steaming cup of tea. The aroma alone made Melissa's stomach growl, reminding her she hadn't eaten much since the plane ride. The maid, who introduced herself as Colette, offered a shy smile. Bonjour, Mademoiselle Daniels. Madame Moreau asked me to bring you breakfast. She will see you once you have finished. May I assist you with your hair? Melissa hesitated, uncertain if she was supposed to maintain a professional distance or be friendly. But Colette's earnest expression put her at ease. Yes, thank you, she replied. As she sipped the tea, Colette deftly pinned up her hair in a neat chignon, explaining that Monsieur Moreau preferred his staff to look polished at all times. The notion that she was now considered staff sank in. This was no ordinary film set. She gazed at the elegant reflection in the gilded mirror. The black dress, white apron, her hair neatly pinned. She certainly looked the part of a high-end maid. Once she'd finished eating, Colette guided her through a warren of corridors to a bright conservatory filled with exotic plants. High glass ceilings lent the morning sun, bathing the room in warm, diffused light. At a small table near a cluster of orchids sat Madame Moreau, composed as ever. Sit, Madame Moreau commanded, gesturing to a chair opposite her. We have much to discuss and precious little time. Melissa complied, her heart thudding. This woman exuded an aura of cold efficiency that made it clear she brooked no nonsense. Thank you for the meal, Melissa ventured politely. Of course, Madame Moreau replied. She took a measured sip from a porcelain teacup, then fixed Melissa with a piercing stare. I understand you believe you are here to participate in a documentary. Let me clarify the situation. My brother, Monsieur Jacques Moreau, is in poor health. He is the patriarch of the Moreau family fortune, which is considerable, spanning estates, businesses, and various international investments. Melissa's mind raced. She'd never heard of the Moreaus, but then again, she wasn't well versed in global high society. She nodded slowly, trying to absorb the information. Madame Moreau continued. Our legal counsel requires that certain familial obligations be met before the reading of my brother's will. One such obligation includes the presence of his fiancée at upcoming family proceedings. Melissa's breath caught in her throat. Fiancée? I'm afraid I don't understand, she managed. What does that have to do with me, specifically? A thin smile curved across Madame Moreau's lips. Jacques, in his declining years, has grown somewhat sentimental. He has been disillusioned with the vultures who circle around him, nieces, nephews, distant cousins, all eager to claim a portion of his estate. Recently, he expressed a desire to wed again, purely for companionship, he says. But time is short, and arrangements had to be made discreetly. Melissa felt her stomach twist. Arrangements? Yes. Jacques' health is precarious, and the will reading is scheduled. He announced he intended to bring his fiancée to the event, but we lacked one small detail. A fiancée. It was decided behind closed doors that hiring someone to fill this role temporarily would be the simplest solution to avoid a familial uproar. Melissa's eyes widened. A proxy bride? This couldn't be real. I'm an actress, she stammered. Are you saying you want to pretend to be Monsieur Moreau's fiancée? Precisely. To satisfy the legalities and maintain family harmony, we needed someone to fit a certain image, someone refined, yet not widely known in social circles. When we came across your headshot, we knew you would be perfect. Your look, your demeanor, your kindness, as my brother put it. For a moment, Melissa was speechless. The $15,000, the secrecy, the lack of cameras, it all clicked into place. There was no documentary. This was a grand charade for a wealthy French family. She felt a mixture of outrage and, strangely, relief to finally have some answers. But why the maid uniform? She asked, her voice trembling with a mix of confusion and anger. Is that part of the act? Madame Moreau's expression hardened. That was my doing. I needed to observe you, test your humility, see how you would fit into the household. Also, Jacques wants a companion who is grounded, not someone who believes they are above menial work. Now that you know the truth, you will continue to serve as a maid, while in private family matters, you will be presented as his fiancée. Melissa's thoughts spiraled. This was beyond any role she'd ever played. I'm sorry, she said, her voice quivering. It's insane. I can't just pretend to be someone's fiancée. There must be legal implications. Madame Moreau nodded. Indeed, there are. That's why your compliance is paramount. You have been well compensated already, and you will receive considerably more if you fulfill your duties. Do you understand? Melissa swallowed. Suddenly, $15,000 seemed like a drop in the ocean compared to the complexity of the situation. But is Monsieur Moreau, does he even want this? Or is he being coerced? Coerced? My brother is old, but he's far from incompetent. This was his idea, after all. He wants to shield himself from the opportunists in our family. And perhaps, in his own sentimental way, he wants a chance at companionship before his time is up. And what about me? Melissa's voice rose. I have a life back home, a grandmother, a job. We are not preventing you from communicating with them, as long as you maintain discretion. If you play your part convincingly, you can leave after the reading, with more money than you've ever dreamed of. Madame Moreau's words hung in the air like a velvet noose. Melissa felt cornered. The logical part of her screamed to walk away, to contact her embassy or the police. But the lure of financial security, for both her and Grandma Lucy, was intoxicating. And Monsieur Moreau, from the brief meeting earlier, seemed kindly enough, hardly a monster. She glanced at Colette, who stood silently in the corner, eyes downcast. Did she know everything? Probably. It was hard to imagine the household staff being kept in the dark. Finally, Melissa drew a trembling breath. I'll do my best. But if anything feels wrong, I'm leaving. Understood. Madame Moreau inclined her head. Understood. Now, you'll formally meet the rest of the household at lunch. Act the maid for now. But later this evening, Jacques will call upon you to introduce you to his inner circle. Do not betray our confidence. With that, Madame Moreau rose, effectively dismissing Melissa. Colette led her out of the conservatory, down a series of corridors, and into a large, gleaming kitchen where other household staff bustled about. The aroma of fresh bread, simmering sauces, and fragrant herbs swirled around her, momentarily comforting. Colette handed her a feather duster and a polishing cloth. For now, you help with small tasks, dusting, cleaning. You'll learn more as we go. Melissa nodded, heart pounding. She was an actress cast in the strangest role of her life. As she moved through the corridors, dusting ornate vases and furniture, she couldn't help but marvel at the absurdity. Just yesterday, she was scraping by in her grandmother's café, taking an unexpected call for a documentary. Now, she was in Paris, about to pretend to be an elderly billionaire's fiancée. Between polishing antiques and carefully wiping down marble statues, she planned what she'd say if she managed to call Grandma Lucy. She'd have to be vague, for sure, but maybe she could drop hints that she was safe, at least for now. She sighed, her mind buzzing with questions. Would the Moreau family accept her? How far did the charade go? And most pressing, was she really ready to step into this unbelievable new life, if only temporarily? Yet every time fear threatened to overwhelm her, she remembered Jacques Moreau's gentle smile. Something in his eyes had suggested he wasn't just using her as a pawn. Maybe, beneath all the scheming, there was genuine warmth. She vowed to give him the benefit of the doubt. For now, Melissa's introduction to the Moreau family came at a lavish luncheon held in a formal dining room that resembled a museum more than a place to eat. A long table draped in pristine linen stretched under the glow of an ornate chandelier. The midday sun filtered through tall windows, illuminating a sumptuous spread of French cuisine. Wine glasses and fine china sparkled under the attentive eyes of uniformed waitstaff. Though she was dressed in her maid's uniform, Melissa had been instructed to simply observe while the family dined. She stood by the wall with the other staff, her heart fluttering with nerves. Several members of the extended Moreau family were present. Cousins, nephews, nieces, all impeccably dressed and exuding the quiet arrogance of old money. They barely acknowledged the staff, except to occasionally gesture for more wine or an extra helping of a particular dish. Across the table, Jacques Moreau, flanked by Madame Martine Moreau on one side and a stern-faced man who appeared to be a lawyer on the other, appeared subdued yet alert. Melissa caught him glancing in her direction more than once, a small smile lifting the corners of his mouth. No one seemed to notice but her. The conversation was in hushed, formal French, occasionally switching to English when references to business ventures emerged. Though Melissa understood some French from high school, the rapid, sophisticated chatter mostly eluded her. What she did pick up made her realize just how wealthy this family was. Discussions of investments in Asia, shipping interests in Africa, real estate developments in North America. Midway through the meal, Jacques suddenly cleared his throat. The room quieted as all eyes turned to him. He pushed his plate aside, placing his hands deliberately on the table. "There is news," he began, his voice surprisingly steady. "I intend to finalize my personal affairs sooner than expected." A ripple of tension passed through the family. One of the nephews, an olive-skinned man in his 30s, exchanged a glance with a stylish woman who might have been his wife. Madame Moreau set down her wine glass, her expression stony. "I will introduce my fiancée," Jacques continued. "She is here, among us, though her presence may surprise you." He turned his gaze to the staff lined against the wall. Mademoiselle Daniels, come forward, s'il vous plaît. Melissa's heart almost leapt out of her chest. This was it, the moment. She glanced at Madame Moreau, who gave a barely perceptible nod. Summoning every ounce of courage, Melissa stepped away from the wall, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Gasps and murmurs spread among the Moreau family. As she approached the table, she felt their critical eyes scanning her from head to toe, taking in her maid's uniform. She forced herself to stand tall, channeling the composure she learned from acting classes. "Mademoiselle Melissa Daniels," Jacques announced, voice resonating in the quiet room. "She is a woman I choose to stand beside me for whatever remains of my life." He paused and added gently, "She is more than she appears, I assure you." The room erupted into hushed whispers. Some looked outraged, others shocked. A few simply wore expressions of amusement. One young woman whispered loudly to a companion, "Is this a joke?" Melissa swallowed, unsure what to say or do. She felt like a statue, pinned by their collective stares. Jacques, sensing her discomfort, reached out a hand. She took it, feeling the warmth of his aged skin against hers. "It's true," she said, her voice trembling. "I know this is sudden, but we've come to an understanding." The words tasted false on her tongue, but it was the best she could manage to maintain the facade. An older cousin with silver hair and sharp cheekbones glared at Jacques. "Uncle, is this your doing or hers? This woman is... she's your employee. A maid." Jacques arched an eyebrow. "Her current position does not define her worth. I had hoped my family would understand such a concept by now." His gaze swept across the table, lingering on each relative. I am not requesting your approval. I am merely informing you of my decision. Jacques arched an eyebrow. Her current position does not define her worth. I had hoped my family would understand such a concept by now. His gaze swept across the table, lingering on each relative. I am not requesting your approval. I am merely informing you of my decision. Tension crackled in the air. Melissa's cheeks burned with embarrassment. But there was also an odd sense of pride stirring within her. She'd agreed to play a role, and now she was in it. Fully, she knew she had to project confidence, or risk being torn apart by these skeptical airs. After a long pause, Madame Moreau stood, her eyes scanning the assembled family like a hawk. My brother has spoken. We will respect his wishes, regardless of our personal feelings. The will reading is scheduled for this weekend at this state. Let us not dishonor him by making a scene. A wave of reluctant acceptance spread around the table. Chairs scraped as some family members returned to their meals, while others glowered at Melissa, their forks suspended midair. The atmosphere was anything but celebratory, yet no one openly rebelled. With a polite dip of her head, Melissa excused herself from the table, her heart still hammering. She hurried back to her station by the wall, avoiding the piercing gazes that followed her. Once the family resumed their guarded conversations, she let out a silent sigh of relief. The hardest part was over, or so she thought. Later that afternoon, she found herself summoned to Jacques' private sitting room. He sat by a window overlooking the gardens, the golden light of late afternoon making his silver hair glow like a halo. "You did well," he said softly as she entered. Melissa closed the door behind her, still trembling. "That was terrifying," she confessed. "They looked at me like I was an intruder." Jacques nodded. "They are terrified themselves, terrified that they might lose their share of the inheritance. Their greed blinds them. But you, my dear, you're different." He beckoned her closer, gesturing to a seat. She hesitated, then sat on the edge of an ornate chair. "Monsieur Moreau, I have to ask, why me? There must have been other candidates. Someone with more experience, or at least knowledge of your family's language and customs." He studied her face for a moment, eyes crinkling at the corners. "I received many profiles, but your eyes, they are kind. You reminded me of my late wife, Catherine. She, too, had a compassionate spirit, unspoiled by ambition." Melissa's throat tightened. "I'm sorry for your loss." A bittersweet smile touched his lips. "It was many years ago, but as my final days approach, I find myself wanting a sense of warmth again, free from the constant scheming. That is why I orchestrated this. You bring an air of honesty to my relatives, for all their polish and refinement lack." She recalled the suspicious stares, the hushed judgments. "They won't accept me," she warned gently. "I'm not from their world." Jacques shrugged. "Their acceptance is irrelevant. The will reading requires only your presence as my fiancé. After that, the legalities can proceed as planned." He paused and added, "But you must be careful. They will try to manipulate you or frighten you into leaving." She nodded, resolve crystallizing. "I won't be bullied." The envelope of cash in her room flashed through her mind, alongside the promise of more to come. She wasn't about to give up the security that could change her and Grandma Lucy's lives forever. Jacques' eyes shone with gratitude. "Merci, Melissa." He reached into a nearby drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. Opening it revealed a breathtaking diamond necklace, the facets catching the late afternoon sun and scattering rainbows across the walls. Melissa inhaled sharply. She'd never seen a gem so large outside of a museum. "This belonged to Catherine," Jacques explained. "I want you to have it. Wear it tonight at dinner. It will show the family that I mean what I say, that you are indeed my intended." Melissa froze. Accepting something so valuable felt like a line being crossed. I can't. It's worth a fortune." Jacques gave a gentle laugh. "It is not yours to keep unless you truly wish it. But for now, wear it as a symbol of my commitment. Trust me, it will send a clear message." Her fingers trembled as she took the box, feeling the weight of the diamond within. A swirl of conflicting emotions threatened to overwhelm her. Excitement, guilt, gratitude, and the creeping fear that she was in too deep. Still, she offered a small nod of acceptance. This was her role. After all, no longer just an actress playing a part, but someone stepping into a reality that was becoming increasingly tangible. That night, as she prepared for dinner, the necklace glinted at her collarbone, and she knew her life had shifted. She was no longer merely pretending. This was real, dangerously, thrillingly real, and there might be no turning back. The tension in the mansion was palpable as the weekend of the will reading approached. The air crackled with a strange mix of dread and anticipation, and Melissa felt caught in the center of a silent storm. Though she dutifully played her role, both as a maid in the public eye and as Jacques' fiancée in private family gatherings, she sensed the family's collective suspicion mounting. She tried to remain stoic during the whispered conversations in the hallways, the sideways glances in the dining room, and the not-so-subtle snubs from certain family members. But whenever doubt threatened to consume her, she thought of her grandmother back home, of the blossoming possibilities this arrangement could bring, and of the unexpected kindness Jacques had shown her. The morning of the will reading dawned bright and clear. By noon, the estate's grand drawing room was filled with hushed voices. Lawyers in dark suits spread thick files across a long mahogany table. The Moreau relatives gathered in clusters, casting sharp looks at one another, and at Melissa, who stood beside Jacques in a simple yet elegant dress he had selected for the occasion. Madame Moreau presided over proceedings with cool authority, directing people to their seats as if orchestrating a stage performance. Once everyone was settled, the head lawyer, Monsieur Dupont, cleared his throat. Mesdames et messieurs, he began in French, switching to English for the benefit of all present. We are here to review the final testament of Monsieur Jacques Moreau. His intentions will be read aloud, and any clarifications made as needed. Jacques, seated at the head of the table, glanced at Melissa and offered a reassuring smile. She placed her hand on his arm, heart pounding. She had no idea what the document contained, but she suspected it would be a bombshell for the others. The reading began. Properties and businesses were doled out in carefully worded paragraphs, each mention of an heir's name eliciting a ripple of reaction. Surprise, relief, or disappointment. Some relatives received significant portions, others mere tokens. Tension mounted as the minutes ticked by, because there was still no mention of the fiancé, the new addition to the Moreau family drama. Finally, Monsieur Dupont reached the closing clauses. "And in acknowledgment of my fiancée, Mademoiselle Melissa Daniels," he read, "I hereby bequeath a living trust in her name, consisting of financial assets and property, to be administered at her discretion should I pass before our wedding day." A collective gasp tore through the room. Immediately, a cacophony of voices erupted, some in French, some in English, all overlapping in indignation or astonishment. Melissa felt her face grow hot as she realized what the testament entailed. Jacques was leaving her an enormous fortune, something she'd never even dreamed of inheriting. One of the nephews jumped to his feet. "This is preposterous. She's an outsider, a fraud." He jabbed a finger toward Melissa. "She's only been here a matter of days." Madame Moreau's expression was unreadable. "My brother's wishes are his own," she said icily. "You would do well to respect them." But the room was in an uproar. Voices rose, accusations flew. Melissa took a step back, stunned by the hostility. Jacques tapped his cane sharply on the floor, commanding attention. The chatter subsided, though smoldering resentment burned in many eyes. "Enough," Jacques said, each word precise. "This is my choice. Melissa has shown me genuine kindness, something I have rarely felt from many of you. She is not here to rob you or swindle you, but rather to help fulfill a simple human desire for companionship in my last days." Melissa's eyes stung with unshed tears. She'd never asked for any of this. She had simply answered a casting call, and now she was at the center of a family maelstrom. She opened her mouth to speak, to defend herself, but Jacques reached out and gently squeezed her hand. Just then, the sharp sound of shoes clicking on the marble floor interrupted them. The doors of the drawing room swung open, revealing a tall man with salt and pepper hair. He carried a briefcase and wore an air of professional detachment, but his eyes flickered with recognition when they landed on Melissa. Monsieur Dupont raised an eyebrow. "Francois, what are you doing here?" The newcomer bowed slightly. "I'm Jacques' personal legal advisor. I have an addendum to this that must be shared immediately. Everyone fell silent as he approached. Jacques gestured for him to speak, and Francois opened his briefcase, extracting a sealed envelope. Breaking the seal, he began to read, his voice steady. I, Jacques Moreau, being of sound mind, do solemnly swear that I have been aware, from the very beginning, of Mademoiselle Melissa Danielle's hired status. This arrangement was orchestrated by me, with assistance from my sister, Madame Moreau. However, I have come to find her presence more than just an act. Her authenticity is shown through in every interaction. Therefore, let it be known that I fully intend for her to be treated not as a mere proxy, but as a genuine partner in my final days. A stunned hush fell over the room. Melissa's heart thudded in her chest. Jacques had known she was just playing a role from the start, yet he chose to believe in her genuine kindness. Francois continued, Should Melissa choose to walk away at any point, she shall still receive the originally agreed-upon financial compensation. However, if she chooses to remain and take on a greater role in the stewardship of my estate, she shall be granted significant executive control to ensure the Moreau legacy continues in a spirit of generosity and empathy. Dead silence. Then Jacques struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on his cane. I leave the choice to you, Melissa. I know you never signed up for this level of involvement, but you brought light to my twilight days. You have a rare gift, a heart unclouded by greed. Melissa's mind reeled. The entire family stared at her with a mixture of shock, rage, and, in a few cases, reluctant admiration. She could bolt right now, walk out with enough money to forever change her and her grandmother's life. Or she could stay, step fully into this new world, and uphold Jacques' vision of building something meaningful. Every instinct told her to run. This was far beyond any aspiration she'd ever had. She wasn't a business mogul, nor was she prepared to be a billionaire's fiancée, even if that role was partly an act. But she looked at Jacques, the soft lines of his face, the hopeful glimmer in his eyes, and something within her shifted. Stepping forward, she took a trembling breath. Monsieur Moreau, you've been incredibly generous to me. You changed my life overnight. I can never repay that kindness. But I also know this family and this estate belong to a world that's completely unfamiliar to me. A murmur rippled through the audience. Jacques remained silent, allowing her to speak. She lifted her chin. I came here to play a part, and in doing so, I discovered something real, your genuine gratitude, your desire to leave a better legacy. If you'll have me, I'll stay and do what I can to honor your wishes. But it won't be an act anymore. I'll do it as myself, Melissa Daniels, who want to help you, not because I'm paid to, but because it's the right thing to do. Tears glistened in Jacques' eyes. He reached out and clasped her hand. You have no idea the weight you've lifted from my heart, he whispered. Thank you. Around the room, the Moreau family stood in stunned silence, uncertain how to respond. Some scowled, others seemed resigned. Madame Moreau watched Melissa with a calculating gaze, then gave a single nod, a faint smile playing on her lips. At last, Jacques turned to the assembled relatives, lifting his cane in a gesture of finality. Consider this matter settled. Melissa will play whatever role she sees fit, by my side, or in any capacity she chooses. Let us all move forward. As the lawyers gathered their papers and the family dispersed in subdued murmurs, Melissa felt a sense of surreal calm wash over her. She had chosen to stay in a world that wasn't hers, guided by a moral compass she wasn't sure she possessed until now. She would stand beside Jacques, not as a prop, but as a genuine ally in his twilight years. Standing at the window later that evening, looking out at the manicured gardens and the fading sunlight, Melissa felt the diamond necklace resting against her collarbone. She wasn't just a stand-in maid or a fake fiancée anymore. She was part of a new story, one she could shape with her own hands and heart. And that, she realized, was the biggest twist of all. The end. Enjoyed this story? We invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing more beautiful stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your effort. See you again.